This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Great show for you on this Thursday. Hope everyone's doing well. We're going to talk about JV returning back to the Detroit Tigers. What does it mean for the rotation? Unfortunately, it means bad news for another pitcher. Most likely, that's why this deal was facilitated. Does the Tigers, in their move, put them in a position realistically to make a push? What are the expectations that Adam and I have? And obviously, what does it mean for the Red Wings and the aggressiveness now that one general manager had? Does that mean that maybe others will follow suit? Maybe the guy that's heading the operation over there at Little Caesars Arena? We'll talk all about it. And to finish out the show, we'll talk about the Detroit Lions heading to the Combine next week. What does it mean? Free agency, the salary cap, who the Lions should prioritize bringing back. And we got to talk about it when Michigan lands the number one overall ranking in college basketball. All the players head to the bar and start cussing out their opponents. We'll talk about Michigan hoops and give them some flowers to end the show. Because isn't it funny? We do a show, we record it, and literally we hit end. We do our greetings and salutations, hope everything's well, have a little chat, and then 10 minutes later, the internet explodes with, what? Justin Verlander's back. And it was exciting, but I just think that the nostalgia bug that hit everybody was crazy. The dude is over 40 years old, so you're not getting Nolan Ryan. I do think you're getting a fourth or fifth starter, maybe a guy that in a pinch in the postseason, if something doesn't go right, you are getting somebody that can eat some innings. But did anybody want to kind of look at what he did last year? His numbers were okay, but they weren't crazy. Now it's a very cheap deal. It's $2 million this year, and he gets $11 million more deferred over, in 2030 and beyond. So it's one of those finagle deals. Fine, it's not a problem. What bothered me was it comes on the heels of learning that Reese Olson's done for 2026, and I'm like, man, that's. Comparably, I do think, humbly, Reese Olson's a little bit better than Justin Verlander. So I'm bummed out about that. But when I look at it and I say, all right, you get a vet, I think that he'll have a lot of experience, a lot of opportunity to help out the likes of Tariq Skubal, Framber Valdez, Jack Flaherty. I think that there's an opportunity to get another basic coach in the room. So I'm okay with it, but I didn't have the same. It was like, oh, cool, Justin Verlander's back. Maybe he can finish his story with the Tigers, but I didn't have the same level of like, wow, nostalgia, because it's been a long time. And he's already, to me, when you win a championship with a guy, it's cool, but when he's already won one somewhere else, it's like, yeah, it's fun, but it's not as exciting when if he would have did it back in the day when we started the podcast 10 years ago, or when in 06, when the Tigers burst onto the scene, he was a first-year pitcher. So I think it's cool, but I don't think this makes the Tigers, it's not the final piece of the puzzle to put the Tigers into World Series contention. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
I was shocked, and I'll be honest with you, I was in the middle of taking a shit after we just got recording, and I shot you a text message, and I was like, well, there's your right-handed pitcher. And you're right. It comes on the heels of Reese Olson basically being done for the year. Like, you're going to get nothing out of him. And he was the guy that we had penciled into the rotation, and we're like, he'll be a guy who's going to be your fourth starter, ? Possibly your third starter. And you were really hoping for Reese Olson to be able to build off of what was exciting at the early part of last season. So this then comes on the heels of finding out that he's going to give you absolutely nothing for the year, and he's done because of, I believe it was an elbow procedure that he had taken care of over the offseason. He's just not going to be healthy for this year. So it's this kind of bittersweet blow that you get, and I don't know what people are necessarily expecting from Justin Verlander. Like, this isn't going to be the same guy that you had when he was in his prime and the Detroit Tigers were competing for World Series. And I don't think he's a guy who makes you a World Series contender. He's not the final piece to the puzzle. What he is he's a back of the rotation guy. He's a fourth or fifth starter. He's a guy who will probably be skipped every fourth or fifth start just to help preserve him. He's a guy who's going to come in, and if we're being honest, you're probably going to set Tarek Skubal next to him. And you're going to say, Tarek, learn everything you can learn from him. And that's in the guise and in the hopes that after we go to a lockout, because, hey, guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're going to a lockout. The hope is that you can re-sign Tarek Skubal after you do all those things, because it's evident that you're not trading Tarek. You're pushing all in this year. That's what this is all about, and that's what this move was done to help kind of signify this with Framber Valdez. So this is a team that is constructing a pitching staff that should be incredibly competitive. I think you will win the Central. I don't think that this move puts you over the top and makes you a World Series contender, but I do think it makes you very, very formidable, especially coming out of the AL. Now, what has to be done is something that we talked about last week. They've got to go get a bat. They've got to go find somebody. And I don't think that move's going to actually happen until the trade deadline. But what I think it does show you is Scott Harris, Chris Ilitch, they're willing to spend money. And like you said, it's a $2 million deal up front. It's $11 million deferred for later. And so I think what that does is that opens up a bit of a checkbook for a move to be made this year at the trade deadline. They're going to have to go get a bat who's going to help in the middle of that order. I think the moment that they do that, I think you, I, Tiger Nation, all of a sudden we feel much better. We look at this team and we say, okay, yes, this is a team that can compete with possibly the likes of a Toronto's Blue Jays, an LA Dodgers, a New York Mets, a New York Yankees type of lineup. And I think that's what we're looking for here. There's still a piece or two away. And look, that's barring any injuries. That's barring anything crazy happening in the middle of the season. I like what they're doing. They're showing that they're willing to spend money, and that's been the one thing that you and I have asked for. I don't think Justin Verlander is the creme de la creme. Like you said, he's like 41, 42. He's as old as me. And I'll be honest with you. I wake up on Sunday mornings to go bowl, and my back hurts like hell. I don't know how this guy's still getting it done, going out there trying to give you 6-7 innings. But I think this signing was done essentially with the looks of, look at what he did the last 7 games of last year. If he can go out and he can be a bulldog for you, give you 6-7 innings, give up minimal earned runs, walk minimal guys, and help a Tarek Skubal go to that next level, I think that's why this was done. I'm not upset at the move. I don't have the warm fuzzies. Again, I don't think this is the move that is the cherry on the top. I still think the Sunday's being built, and I think they're going to end up waiting to the trade deadline to do it. I think what it does, though, is it now puts a spotlight, and it turns up the gas a little bit on a guy like Steve Yzerman. If Scott Harris is able to go out there and spend damn near $40 million on Framber Valdez, if Scott Harris is able to go out there and spend $13 million on an old-ass Justin Verlander and bring him back, if Scott Harris is able to go make moves and comes out and says, look, all I got to do is say, hey, Chris, we need some money, and Chris is forking over a paycheck, I think it puts Steve Yzerman in a bit of a spot where you can no longer say, hey, we don't have the money. We're doing this all with the young kids. I think this now puts Steve Yzerman in a move where this trade deadline coming up in March for the NHL, Steve Yzerman has to be a mover, has to be a shaker, has to go out there and get things done. Does Scott Harris and does Chris Ilitch now box Steve Yzerman in to where if he's not making moves, not getting things done, we've got to have a little bit of a different conversation as to what the hell Steve Yzerman's actually doing and what the hell he's actually trying to put together here, because you and I have talked about it multiple times. We have no idea what the hell the Yzer plan is anymore. We don't know what it looks like. He's given us multiple off seasons. He's given us multiple trade deadlines, and this team has been in contention for the playoffs, where we've come walking away from it saying, "What the hell's going on here?" And even his own players, his own captain of his team has said, "Look, we needed guys. They didn't go get us guys. I don't know what you want me to say." And then somebody got a talking to and slapped on the wrist. I feel like Scott Harris, I feel like Chris Ilitch almost sold Steve Yzerman out and have put him in a spot where he better make moves at the trade deadline. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell Red Wing Nation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when it would appear when they return back from the Olympic break, and we are on the verge, hopefully, of a U.S. versus Canada final. We'll see if the USA can come back and handle business. So I'm excited. The Olympics are cool. It was cool to see Kenny, the United States, thump Germany. So it was cool to be able to see what's going on with the hockey and everything going on with the Olympics. So it's been pretty cool. And looking at everything going on, I'm interested in a lot of what Steve Yzerman is thinking about the team. He doesn't talk a lot. And so when I see the Red Wings, I'm just wondering what it's about, like what he's thinking overall with the team, right? It's like you see a general manager that I think believes in the team, but always you have the sense that he wants to see more, right? Like he wants to see where the team is at. And I think that the supporters are kind of maybe believing that they're further along than maybe Steve Yzerman thinks. And it's interesting because the Wings had a nice stretch to start the year, but then things kind of, dipped a little bit. It's been up and down prior to the break. And I think the break for the Wings came at the exact right time in my mind. So I just think that for the Wings to get that next step, they got to kind of come out hot after the Olympic break. And you're right. I think that everyone's ready for the teams around town to kind of take the next step, which is more aggression in talent acquisition externally. So Scott Harris did it. And first and foremost, the facts, the Tigers cause are spending $200 million plus, top 10 payroll. It puts you in the conversation, a lot more respect. So I'm happy with that. Because where do you think the Wings should add? Are there reasonable options? Because I know we all were bummed out that they didn't acquire, the player that was traded. Everyone was like, wow, that was someone that everyone felt like, well, he's a local guy and you didn't get him. He went to Minnesota, I believe. So you're like, man, you didn't get him. And you're just like, well, the team is okay, but I think that maybe, and I'll get your sense of it, do you think they could actually make a deeper run with an opportunity to add maybe a top defenseman and a scoring forward, that they could actually take a couple steps forward? Because I think that right now, the early goal right now is just to get to the postseason.
Yeah, look, I think the Red Wings, they're where they're at right now, I think is a surprise to everybody, right? This is a team that's competing, and this is a team that is in the tops of the Eastern Conference. And yeah, to go out grab a guy like Quinn Hughes would have been massive, would have been awesome. That was the guy that we wanted. That's the defenseman who you would have put him on this roster, and he instantly would have gave you credibility. He would have instantly taken your defense to that next level. He would have instantly helped change the way your power play looks. He would have instantly changed the way your top four looks. And it wouldn't have just been for this season. It would have been for next year. And if you could have worked out that deal, he would have been a guy who would have been a top 3 player, not just on your defense, but on your roster for the next couple of seasons going forward. And Steve Yzerman was shy. He didn't want to get the deal done. Didn't want to give up the pieces to get that done. And I think that's kind of where we're going to start to question what Steve Yzerman's going to do at the trade deadline. What are you willing to part with to get guys here? What are you willing to give up to make this roster better? Because you didn't want to give up Simon Edvinsson. That's the report, to make this roster better with a Quinn Hughes. So what are you willing to part with, and what are you looking to add? Because I think that you need to add a top 4 defenseman, and I think you need to add a top 3, at the very minimum, a top 6 forward. Like you need guys on both ends to really help take over scoring. Scoring is the issue with this team. You're getting decent enough goaltending, on certain nights. the goaltending stands on its head and looks outstanding. And adding a solid defenseman in front of that, yes, makes that much better. But adding a guy on the back end who can help take over a power play and score goals makes that look so much better and gives you breathing room to where when the goaltending's having a bit of an off night, you can kind of get by. Now, you add in another forward who can take over some play, and you add in another forward who can all of a sudden make a guy like a DeBrincat look better, make a guy like a Lucas Raymond look better, make a guy like a Dylan Larkin look better, and you help take over those power plays, instantly you're a credible threat. You're a team that can compete with the likes of a Colorado. In going into the Olympic break, it was nice to see this team rebound after just getting their face rubbed in it by a team like Colorado. That's a team that you want to compare yourself to. That's a team that is dangerous. And for you to be able to bounce back and be able to get a win going to Colorado, it spoke volumes about where this team is and where this team wants to be. But yes, I think the trade deadline is going to tell us everything we need to know about Steve Yzerman, going to tell us everything we need to know about this so-called Yzer plan, and he needs to add at least one piece at the very top on the offense, and he needs to add a dangerous piece on the defense if we're going to take this team serious, if we're going to consider this team credible. And I think the general managers in this town have kind of been put on notice. We were hoping that something would happen with the Detroit Pistons at the trade deadline. They didn't do anything. So Scott Harris, first guy to kind of pull the trigger, I think now puts pressure on Steve Yzerman, and that's going to kind of, I think, filter over to what the Detroit Lions are going to do and what the Detroit Lions have to do. And they're in a bit of a strange spot. They're over $9 million over the cap limit. And you've got to make some moves, I think, internally, restructuring contracts, but they've got holes all over this roster. Like, the offensive line needs to be addressed. The defensive line needs to be addressed. The secondary on the Detroit Lions roster needs to be addressed. How would you prioritize this offseason? Walk me through. If you were Brad Holmes, what would you do? Because like I said, you're $9 million over the cap limit. That's before we even start looking to add guys. And you're about to lose a ton of free agents, a ton of guys. And you've got a guy like Alex Anzalone out there on Twitter taking pot shots at the social media department, a guy who has been very vocal about wanting to come back, but also very vocal about wanting to get paid. I don't know how those things necessarily work out. And I feel like you look at some of the free agents that are due for contracts, I feel like the Detroit Lions are in a bit of a tight spot, especially with their cap situation being what the cap situation is. So I want your, we'll call it 6-point plan.
Yes.
To get this team into a situation where, look, we've talked about it on prior podcasts. I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. With the cap ramifications, with where they're at, and with all the holes that they need to fill, I don't think it's doable. But give me your 5 or 6 point plan to make this team a playoff contender next year.
Yeah, no doubt. First of all, your offense is going to be okay. So most people believe that you plug your holes in free agency and you draft for development. So I would think that the biggest thing is going to be to find a external center that's going to come in. McGovern, Linderbaum, maybe the guy from Arizona if he's a cap casualty. Somebody to come in and run the ship. You have to have a center. You can't go to Tate Ratledge. You can't go to Graham Glasgow. The key is buy a center. Maybe even buy a left tackle too if there's an opportunity to get one affordably, and you keep it moving. Now, in terms of their own free agents, I do think that you got to make some tough decisions. I think Alex Anzalone, DJ Reader will get deals elsewhere. I even think Al-Quadin Muhammad, if he wants $10 million, might just go to the highest bidder. I do think that they'll prioritize him. I would find a way to give him that second year if you need to. Figure out how to lower the cap hit. So I would keep Al-Quadin Muhammad. He got you double-digit sacks. Aiden Hutchinson's pining for him. He wants him. So that's fine. But if someone's going crazy and doing 11, 12, and offering multiple years, you got to make the tough decision. So I would prioritize Al-Quadin Muhammad, Roy Lopez, and Avonte Maddox. Those are the three you want back for sure. If you can work out something with Amik Robertson, that's fine, but you can also part ways if need be. But in my opinion, I do think that Al-Quadin Muhammad, it's somebody that's in your system and got double-digit sacks. So that's nice productivity. It's a nice fit as a third potential defensive end, as a role player, and then you can maybe draft one or two. So that's what I think. I think you move on from Alex Anzalone, you move on from DJ Reader, and you just give the reins to Tyleik Williams and Jack Campbell, and maybe you draft a younger linebacker or you get one in free agency. So that's just the way it goes. I do think that, Alex Anzalone is going to garner a lot of attention, and you hope maybe that he does. He's going to be 32 when the season starts. So I think that you can really keep the $6 million and try to figure out ways to, I do think the two guys that are going to get clear extensions are going to be Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs. Whether we agree or not, we'll talk about it. But I just think that, I do think that it's tough. Now, with the cap situation, you are right. As we sit, they are over the cap, but they're going to get an infusion of $45 million right away when they restructure Jared Goff. So you're going to be on the right side of it. So I do think that we all think there's going to be maybe one splash where you get a guy to 8 to 12 million and a bunch of these reserve things, a bunch of these guys. And then this is where it's important, because this draft is where Brad Holmes has to hit. Like you get 7-8 picks. You might have to trade down from 17 and figure out a way to get that third round pick back, figure out a way. Because what's happened is once the team got good, Brad Holmes stopped cooking. We've drafted the least amount of players overall the last 3 years compared to the league. And it's in the lower third.
Packaging draft picks for wide receivers.
Right.
That's what happened.
Right. When you look at,
you will never be able to ever explain to me.
Right.
The thought process for putting multiple third round picks to go get a wide receiver and then turning around and extending
J-Mo.
Williams. Like, you'll never be able to make that make sense to me. Am I crazy? When I look at this free agent list that they've got, right, with their own free agents, I don't necessarily want any of them back.
Right.
It's okay if they all go.
All right.
Like you said, a guy like Roy Lopez, Amik Robertson, it would maybe be a bit of a priority for me. Al-Quadin Muhammad, you better give me a hometown discount.
Right.
That's the only way I want you back. I'm not going out trying to break the bank for you. Jake Bates might be the only guy where I'm like, okay, we got to sit down and have a conversation. The rest of these guys, you're all bit players. You're all spare parts. You're all just kind of guys. I think if I'm Brad Holmes, I'm going into this offseason and I'm having very serious conversations with Jared Goff about how we're restructuring his contract. I'm then probably going to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm like, look, man, can we free up some money from you? Can we restructure your deal as well to give us more, girth with where we're at as far as our cap space goes, and we'll just kick those cans down the road and we'll figure all of that out, because according to Spot Track, you're well over $9 million, and that's a situation where I thought that they kind of had things wrapped up. I thought they were doing things appropriately. But this is what happens when you prioritize signing your own guys instead of going out and taking advantage of your Super Bowl window. So now we're in a spot where you've gotten worse over the last 3 years. And what have you done? You've got a bunch of bloated contracts from your own guys, and now you're talking about possibly signing your own linebacker in Jack Campbell, and possibly signing, he's explosive, but he's a running back. And you have used and abused Jahmyr Gibbs over the last couple of years. I don't ever really like being the guy who gives that second contract to a running back, because you start to see the wear and tear that you've already put them through. And look, you're going to know the wear and tear. You're going to know what that deal is. And to me, it's always a bit of a deal with the devil, where you get this guy, you bring him in. Okay, now we're going to talk about extending you. On the back end of that deal, those deals tend to look like those Miguel Cabrera contracts, where you're just kind of paying a guy for what he was and not what he's going to give you. So it becomes a very dangerous roll of the dice when you're looking to extend a running back. And I think you've seen it last year. Running backs are byproducts of your offensive line, which kind of leads me to what would be my second point, right? I'm going to restructure deals with Jared Goff. I'm going to try to restructure a deal with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to get some cap space. I'm going to get some money where I can go out and take care of some stuff in free agency. And the stuff that I'm looking to take care of in free agency is going to be my center. It's going to possibly be my left tackle because I'm going to have a conversation with Taylor Decker. I'm going to be like, hey, man, what are we doing? I need to know. Essentially, I need to know within the next 2 weeks what you want to do. And if you don't tell me, I'm not going to be stuck like I was stuck with Frank Ragnow. I'm going to make that decision for you because there's a guy that you could just cut. And if you cut him, you're saving an ass load of money. And again, I've got more money to be able to go out and do things in free agency, like address that center, like address that left tackle, like address those guard positions on this team. And then I can take my view and I can take some of that money and go address my defensive line. I can look at possibly maybe making a trade for a cornerback because, let's be honest, the last couple of drafts from Brad Holmes, the cornerbacks are not any good. Ernest Rakestraw, you could put him on the side of a milk cart because he doesn't play, and I don't know where he's been. He's constantly hurt. You look at Terrion Arnold, a guy who I was excited when they signed him. I loved the story. I loved everything that was kind of wrapped up, and when they got him, I celebrated it. But he's not been any good. Amik Robertson is probably your best cornerback that you've had the last 2 years. And so that would be one of those unrestricted free agents of my own that I would probably prioritize. But again, do I think you can find better? Yeah, I do. And that guy has that gritty toughness. He likes playing here. He's got that mindset. But I'm not willing to break the bank for that guy. And that's one of those things where he's going to be due up for a contract. He's going to want to cash in on what has been really good play, especially when he's put in a position where he can play the type of football that he needs to play. He has limitations. He's not a guy who can play on your outside. He got burned and torched a lot last year because they had to play him out of position. He's a guy who, if he lines up in the slot, you put him in the box. He's a guy who excels. He's limited. So I'm not breaking the bank for a guy like that. But I do like what he brings. I do like the mentality. I do like what he means for the locker room. And so after spending money on addressing my offensive line, my defensive line, trying to flesh out my secondary, I think that puts you into a better spot when you go into the draft and when you're going to the combine, which you're going to be at next week. You gotta sit there and you gotta take a look at how are you going to help Aiden Hutchinson out? Are you going to be able to draft a guy that you can put alongside him, or are you going to address that in free agency? Are you going to end up drafting more offensive guys, offensive linemen that you can sit there and plug and play? Like, I don't want these projects, man. Like, I'm tired of the guys who are 3-year projects. For me, you need to get a guy, you need to work with him for maybe a year, and he's got to go in there. He's got to start taking reps.
Yes.
And then defensively, I'm tired of the swings and misses for corners. Like, you and I both know, corners take some time. They do. They take some time. But when we're going into year 3, I'm sorry, I'm all out of patience for you. I'm all out of time. Like, I feel like your cornerbacks need to come probably from free agency, and that becomes a dangerous game because DJ Reed wasn't any good this year. So like it becomes tough. Like you need to invest high with a corner, and I feel like they've got other pressing needs. Like they need to address in the trenches. I think if you can fix your trenches, you can kind of piecemeal the back end of that defense, and I feel like you can piecemeal different parts of the offense that maybe you're neglecting. Right, your third wide receiver. I always feel like a wide receiver is a guy you can just go get out of a bushel bin. And as long as your quarterback's got time, he can make them look good. And I feel like Jared Goff's a decent enough quarterback. I don't think he's the second coming of Christ in the quarterback position, but I do feel like you give him protection. He's a top 10, top 5-ish quarterback, but he needs protection. He needs pieces around him. So that's what I would do with my plan. That's how I would address it. Legit, man, when I look at this roster, like Al-Qadim Muhammad, I feel like he had a couple of games where he's gonna make his payday, right? Like he's not a full-time player. The dude is part-time as part-time can be. he had the majority of his sacks and the majority of his pressures in a very limited amount of games. You look at everybody else, man. Like I said, Amik Robertson's probably the guy. I liked what Roy Lopez did, but again, these are like part-time guys. These aren't guys that you're breaking the bank to bring back. So it'll be interesting to see what Brad Holmes actually does with his own free agents, and it'll be interesting to see how he keeps signing his own guys, because that has been the calling card here, signing your own guys. And I feel like now you're starting to see the dangers of playing that game, especially, like you said, when you're not drafting well. Brad's not actually cooking, and he's giving you fast food. It isn't really working out.
Right. No, it was like he got happy with his own supplies, and he didn't look to the potential new ingredients, the new better ingredients out there that have been manufactured out there. So it's something that you got to always look. And look, can you blame them? They won 15 games. They didn't expect all those injuries. So now you got to realize that the word of the offseason is evolve. You got to be a little bit more aggressive in your approach in free agency. You got to be a little bit more aggressive in no more projects in the draft, and you got to improve this team at the trade deadline. So I do think that those tools will be available and hopefully will be utilized this year by the general manager in the front office. But I do think too that there are a lot of holes, and I know people will say, okay, let's look at safety. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, there's big injury questions. So does Thomas Harper and Avonte Maddox fill that for the time being? Maybe. Do you go out and get somebody to handle business there? You look at linebacker. Losing Alex Anzalone, you understand why, but that's still a hole potentially. And Derek Barnes is okay, but he didn't have the best 2025 season. And Malcolm Rodriguez is somebody that could also depart as well. So linebacker could be a position. Defensive tackle, you're losing DJ Reader, and Tyleik Williams was good, but he also needs to continue to evolve. Aleem McNeil needs to continue to develop and get better after his surgery. So you also need 2 or 3 defensive ends. And like you said, there's question marks at cornerback. So I know everyone's positive about the Lions and they feel like all these holes are going to get plugged. I just think that it's a 2-year rebuild. I think that you get back to the postseason this year. You have a new offensive coordinator, and there's always something. Like, it's never just going to be perfect where Drew Petzing slots in and he's the next Ben Johnson. It'll take some time, communication, understanding all the tools that he's got, how to figure things out. And then you got to realize that you got a left tackle potential that's going to retire, and a center, and you got 2 young guards that are still developing. So I think the mix is getting there where you realize, okay, with the talent that you have, you should be a playoff team. But I think to realize that when you see the up-and-coming teams, you realize the Eagles are going to rebound. The Rams are always going to be there. And you think Seattle is not going to just fall off the face of the earth. Their costs are going to go up a little bit. They may part ways with some of their talent. But foundationally, when you got Kenneth Walker and you got Jackson Smith and Jigbo, who's going to get better, and you realize, okay, that's a nice defense that is young and hungry, you got some work to do. So I do think that, until we see the draft and what those new prospects look like, I do think that my expectations are, okay, get back to the postseason, see what you can do, and then in 27, make your push, because I do think that's the end of that window. And we'll see what happens because pay attention too, this is how fast the NFL world hits. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes' contract ends in 2027. So if they don't do nothing, if the signs are not there, I would say, the formula says that if you don't win, a head coach that doesn't win with the team that he's at within 7 years, they don't ever do it. And now you're already past the 5-year rule where if you have a quarterback and a head coach together paired for the first time and they don't win in the first 5 years, they've never won a Super Bowl after 5 years. So the formula might have to change, and we shall see what the Detroit Lions do. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a huge offseason, and it starts March 9th, and that's where you get the agreements to contracts, and free agency starts in March 11th, my birthday. So that's going to be a wild day where free agency officially starts. And remember, Brad Holmes is a late bloomer, a late guy, late riser. So he may be calling these California agents at 9-10 p.m. So pay attention all throughout the internet landscape from March 9th through March 12th, where these free agent deals are going to fly off the shelves, and we'll see where the Lions end up. And yep, next week is the combine. It's a fun time, but I can reveal on Tuesday is when Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are going to speak. And so pay attention to Tuesday afternoon. We'll have coverage at Detroit Lions on SI. And then, the basics of, okay, who are the key guys that people are talking about, the defensive ends. And then Emmett will take over. I'm getting back Thursday. He's going to stay for the rest of the prospects. I'm going for the steak. And he's going for the sizzle, and he can get all the prospects, get you all the news about who should you like, who are the hometown guys, some stories, all that good stuff. I like the steak, and he likes the college draft prospects and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll have it all covered, and we'll report back to the Detroit Sports Podcast and Doc and Jock. Before we get out of here, cuz, look at you guys, Michigan. I'm not going to say I didn't find that video of the Michigan basketball player talking a little junk about Purdue. I found it rather interesting that he's like, F Purdue. And he's like, and it's a video age. I get it. It's not the most becoming of an athlete, but these are kids. I don't, at our age, cuz we can't, judge it too much. It is funny, but you know what? You got to back it up. So by the time this hits, I'm curious if Purdue actually has any guts and stands up for themselves. But Michigan should talk the talk. I mean, they're whooping guys' ass. They're handling business. They drop threes. They play well. They just are a team that, could always use better shooting, better defense a little bit at times. But in terms of what you see from college athletes, you see what Michigan has been able to accomplish, and credit to, my goodness, Dusty May. The team is really, really solid. They're a team that can do a lot of different things, and they've earned the number one spot. And I realize, okay, it's realistic that this basketball team is now in a spot where it's win it all or it's a bad season. You have the talent. It's expectation time. And we here at Doc and Jock never shy away from expectations. It's a sign of respect. So Dusty May's done the job. And Michigan State's fallen off a little bit, but there's clear holes. If Kohler doesn't play well and Fears is the leader, you don't have enough. So you realize, man, Michigan got put together the right way. And it's not easy to just say, well, everybody spends money and have a facility and good coaching and it just works out. It's hard to put a team together the way Michigan did, to find athletes in the portal, to basically blow up a team from 1 year ago and find a bunch of athletes that are quality. But you have a leader, and listen, you get a pass. You can talk the talk and do your thing, but you got to be able to walk the walk when it comes down to it. And I think Michigan, I think that when that bracket comes out, I know you guys are hearing the thrill in my voice. I might have to put the Block M in the Final Four, and it pains me to say it, but Michigan has a good team, and I'll let you take the floor and talk about the Michigan Wolverines basketball team. It just pains me because Dusty May figured out the formula on how to figure out the college basketball landscape, because it's a transfer portal era. We got to deal with it. I know I'm old school, and I want my guys to stay all 4 years and don the Block S and make everybody happy, but it's not realistic. You got to shop, and when you shop, you got to get the right guys. Dusty May's done that.
Look, I think for Michigan, they're right now, as it sits, the best team in college basketball. If you go and you just basically look through the scores from this season, they have 3 games that they didn't win by double digits. Like, when they go out there and they beat people's asses by like 30 points. It's unreal the way that they outscore people. And look, this week is going to tell you everything you need to know. Playing Purdue Tuesday. We're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. They're going to be playing Duke. And they've got another game. I think it might be the Michigan State game. I don't know. I have to go back and look at the schedule just to see real quick. But it's nuts. I'm sorry, they're playing Minnesota. It's just nuts. The way that this team has been playing, the way that this team is constructed, it really does feel like it is win it all or it's a busted season. Like, what good is it to be the number 1 team in the country? What good is it to have everybody talking about you? What good is it to sit there and just completely dominate and walk teams off the court by 30-plus points every other game if you come away with nothing in the end? So I think the expectation, if you're a Michigan basketball fan, is for them to win the national title, for them to go out to win the Big Ten regular season, go out, win the Big Ten tourney, and go and win the national title. dominate all of March Madness. And look, that's my expectation right now. I've been blown away by what Dusty May has done. I think it's incredible to watch these guys play. It's so much fun. It's been a long time since I've been able to sit down and just enjoy Michigan basketball. Just sit down, enjoy how they just take apart teams and how they play. This has been so much fun to watch. This is going to sound funny. So my earliest memories of Michigan basketball. So obviously there's the tournament memories when I was a small boy, and you had the Fab Five. But then I remember being in my bedroom watching Brian Ellerby just coach teams into the ground and just being so frustrated watching those teams play. So you juxtapose that with what you're getting here. This has been fun, man. It's been a lot of fun. But I think if you're Michigan, you've got to go take care of business. Big game against Purdue, like I said, on Tuesday. Then they're going to face off against Duke. And that's going to really, I think that's going to be a game that's going to tell you everything you need to know. How they match up against Duke will let you know, I guess, what the expectation should be for this team. I think they beat Duke. And like I said, I think the expectation is to win the national title. I'm excited, man.
You reminded me. You remember the Brian Ellerby, Tommy Amaker days at Michigan? Those were the fun days where it was like, oh man, everyone's like, okay, it's a football school. Well, Dusty May is a little bit of a step up, and it's interesting too, because for whatever it is, we can't allege things that we don't know are true, but when you look at his relationship with these coaches, nobody wants to shake his hand. Everyone's looking at him side-eye like they're...
I was listening to a press conference with him. And like I like what he's doing on the court, but I left listening to the press conference being like, I don't like him.
Right.
And I'm a Michigan fan.
Right. You know, he sounds, if it's funny, if you guys listen to the betting shows, he sounds like Nick Costos on the radio with the way his sound is. So it's very interesting. I always like, oh, is it the betting guy or is it Dusty May? They have the same tone of voice. But you look at these athletes, and listen, and we can share allegedly, you know, there's discussions online and people are saying potentially, and there's rumors. And look, when you are a successful team, everyone's going to pick you apart. So we don't know if it's true or not. But listen, we assume that everybody does it or should do it. But there's, discussions that maybe Michigan is making some phone calls behind people's backs that they're not supposed to be making. And, the word has been used online, allegedly has been tampering. And you get a sense that the Big Ten coaches are not exactly fond of the practices, potentially, of the Wolverines. But look, I'm all for it. Like, in the effort of winning at the highest level of sports, you don't begrudge anybody unless it's like really outrageous in terms of the things that you're doing, like covering up crimes. We don't obviously advocate that, but calling guys and saying, hey, Tom's old. Like, you got to do it. You got to be like, listen, how long you're gonna commit to? I would say it. I'm a State fan. Remember, I'm a State guy, loyal to a fault. But if you're a recruiter, you're like, Tom's 71 years old, dude. Like, you think he's gonna be there for the next 4 years? Come here, win a ring, and we'll get you some deals here, and say what you got to say. And maybe there's rules and windows and things that, what they call the unwritten spoken agreements that you're not supposed to do. Hell, Michigan will do them. And we'll see how it progresses, because there's a little bit of that underlying terseness, tension when these games are over. And it's interesting to see, because you can clearly see it.
Vocabulary word.
Terse. It's terse and tense.
Vocabulary word.
Yeah, when the games are over, it does not seem like there's warm hugs and it's like just a couple brief little nods and keep it moving. So it's interesting to see how it shakes out moving forward. So Michigan's doing their thing, and they're ruffling the feathers in probably all the right ways, and we'll see how it evolves in the world of college basketball. Make sure you follow Adam on X at AdamRSJROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Our time has come to a close. Another great fun talk with my guy Adam. We'll be back next week recapping what I learned, what I heard at the Combine. Look, you can probably trust I'm not going to get into any fights with any other NFL media. But if there are, we'll try to film one this year. If there's going to be a media scrap like there was last year between insiders, we'll see. Maybe I'll just walk up to one and be like, listen, what do you think of the other guy there? What do you think? Let's see if we can stir up some drama amongst the insiders, see what we can do and learn from the Combine. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. It's been fun. All the jokes, all the fun stuff that we've been seeing online with the Pistons and everything going on. And we appreciate all the banter. So make sure you subscribe. All you got to do is hit your 3 favorite words, Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. We'll fire it up next week on another edition of Doc and Jock, which is featured on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.